I'm a bit today. So let's just get into this. There's been a whole new assassination attempt on Trump's life. Another one. Um, uh, well, this one was far less sort of um, dangerous than the last one. The perpetrator waited um, for Trump at a golf course, a Florida golf course, but has been thwarted because the Secret Service agents sort of stopped him before he was able to fire even a single shot. There were uh, shots fired, but the shots were fired by the Secret Service forces, and then they forced the assailant to retreat. They tracked him down, arrested him, and now I suppose he faces charges. But that's not the interesting part to me, or at least that's not the important part to this whole situation. The more interesting story about the failed assassin of Donald Trump is his sort of story and the narratives built around him, the no time wasted by certain people to paint him in a certain light, to paint him as a far more influential figure than he is. And well, let's get into it. So the person's name is Ryan Weasley Routh, Ryan Weasley Routh. A very, very interesting figure. I believe he is around 57. He's definitely 50 something years old. He is very. He subscribes to very diverse political opinions. He's extremely pro Ukraine, and we will get into that in a moment. He is extremely pro Taiwan, pro Iran, in this sort of strange way that he was extremely pro nuclear deal that has been botched by Donald Trump, which apparently was the turning point in which Ryan decided that he does not like Trump anymore. And I'm saying anymore because Ryan voted for Trump in 2016. So he was a Trump voter in 2016. Extremely pro Taiwan, extremely pro Ukraine. A big advocate when it comes to the issues of homeless people. In Hawaii, he apparently was an organizer of shelters for the homeless. And also, very strangely enough, very weird combination, he was, in addition to that, an anti-vaccine COVID denier, conspiracy theorist. So as you can see, his political beliefs were a mishmash of different things. When Donald Trump sort of made a mess of the nuclear deal that was between the US and Iran, Ryan reportedly urged Iran to assassinate Donald Trump. So that was the thing that happened. But What I want to focus on today, because that is the theme of tonight, I'm sure that many other people will discuss in detail all the politicians that this person has supported. I am sure that many other people will cover in more detail his motive as to why he wanted to assassinate Donald Trump, and his beliefs around that. But what I want to focus on today, what I want to focus on is how his pro-Ukrainian stance basically is used again as a narrative tool by certain people in order to paint him almost as a Ukrainian asset, someone that has influence, someone that has big connections to the Ukrainian government, someone that is basically almost sent by Ukraine in order to assassinate Donald Trump, because Donald Trump would end the war in one day and would end, as someone put it, the endless money train to Ukraine. As you can see, the narrative has been co-opted very quickly, while reality on the situation is quite a lot more mundane. A lot more mundane. Ryan has been enough of a big fan of Ukraine that he has traveled there in order to enlist, in order to fight on the side of Ukraine, the 50-something-year-old man. And he has been, for various reasons, rejected due to his, among other things, age, due to his lack of experience, due to his overall unique demeanor, let's just say. And from then on, he has shifted to trying to get as many people as possible to sort of convince them to come to Ukraine to fight, saying that he's ready to give his life for Ukraine, and that basically he positioned himself as this big recruiter for the Ukrainian cause. That's basically what we are seeing. After the assassination, several people have come forward to say that because of that, he must have been surely that Ryan surely must have been basically a Ukrainian asset. That Ryan must have been a Ukrainian asset. On others, we have Sagar from Breaking Points that he co-hosts with Crystal. And this person has tweeted the following. We're gonna go through this sort of bit by bit. This person has tweeted the following. The alleged Trump shooter spoke to the New York Times in 2023, where he claimed he was in DC to meet with the pro-Ukraine Helsinki Commission staffed by bipartisan pro-Ukraine members of Congress. Interesting claim. It makes it seem like Ryan has made some legitimate contacts with the Ukrainian government. It makes it seem that that contact has been established, that he became sort of intertwined, that sort of further implicates the Ukrainian government in the assassination attempt itself, right? In the interview, Mr. Routh said he was in Washington to meet with the US Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe, known as the Helsinki Commission, for 2 hours to help push for more support for Ukraine. The commission is led by members of Congress and staffed by congressional aides. It is influential on matters of democracy and security and has been vocal in supporting Ukraine. Screenshot number 2. U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate. So that is basically, and let us remind ourselves that Breaking Point is something that presents itself as a legitimate station, as a legitimate source of news, legitimate source of information, something that should be trusted, something that would not spread misinformation, right? The alleged Trump shooter spoke to the New York Times in 2023. Okay, then let's look at that article from 2023 and let's see what it actually says, shall we? Shall we take a look at the actual article from 2023 to see just how legitimate those connections that Ryan has established with the government were? Okay? Let's check it out. Because I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to learn from Breaking Points. So what does the article say? I don't really have a subscription to New York Times, but we can just read the headline. Unfortunately, we cannot view the whole article as I am not subscribed to New York Times, but let's see. The New York Times article says, "Stolen valor, the US volunteers in Ukraine who lie, waste, and bicker." That is something that Breaking Point's presenter has failed to mention in his tweet. People who would not be allowed anywhere near the battlefield in a US-led war are active on the Ukrainian front with ready access to American weapons. Stolen valor, the US volunteers in Ukraine who lie, waste, and bicker. So that's a little bit of like a misleading framing, right? I feel a little bit misled. I feel a little bit sort of like what's happening here? I thought Breaking Points was a legitimate source of information. I thought they were supposed to not lie to me. But I guess, and this is this sort of thing that we will be seeing when it comes to this case over and over and over again, that because this guy went to Ukraine, because he tried fighting in Ukraine, because he acted as this recruiter for people to go and fight in Ukraine as well, that means he basically has to be uh, a stooge almost for the Ukrainian government, and uh, he has to that like he has to be this connection point between the Ukrainian government and the failed assassination of Donald Trump. Of course, this whole thing has been quickly caught on by people like Dmitry Medvedev from Russia, who has said, I wonder what would happen if it turned out that the failed new Trump shooter, Routh, who recruited mercenaries for the Ukrainian army, was himself hired by the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev for this assassination attempt. Already, Russia is sort of creating a big narrative for all of the so-called alternative media to follow suit. This person was hired actually by the Ukrainian government in order to assassinate Donald Trump because he will not be as pro aid to Ukraine as Joe Biden or as Kamala Harris. We've already sort of starting to see these sort of narratives emerge. But the official International Legion of Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, so the official International Legion Twitter account has issued an official statement. Let's see what it says. Let's see what it says about our official recruiter for of mercenaries to fight in Ukraine. Let's see what the official statement is, okay? The official statement is as follows. American citizen Ryan Ralph has never served in the International Legion of the main Directorate of Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, has no relation to the unit. Rumors disseminated in certain media are not true. So we've already seen that the narrative of this official recruiter of mercenaries for the Ukrainian International Foreign Legion, this big shot who has connections to the Ukrainian government, who has been recruited by the Ukrainian government in order to supposedly try to assassinate Donald Trump. We already see that this is a very weak narrative, very easily disprovable narrative. The reality of situation is a lot more simple, and that reality is that this person went to Ukraine, attempted to join some sort of a combat unit. He tried to take part in active combat. He was not allowed to due to his lack of experience and age. He then started on his own without any affiliation of any official structures, recruiting people also without experience in order to fight in Ukraine, which, as far as I know, has not been a gigantic success. And that activity, this is where I say that misinformation takes certain actual facts that happen and twist them in order to attack some enemy. In this case, the enemy would be Ukraine, or push a narrative. In this case, the narrative would be the Ukrainian is plotting to get rid of Donald Trump, who is the biggest threat to continued funding, and did it through its agent Ryan, the big recruiter of mercenaries for the Ukrainian forces, who then has been sent on a special mission in order to assassinate the presidential candidate. Wow! That is so crazy, isn't it? Well, unfortunately, none of it is even remotely true. Unfortunately, none of it makes even a lick of sense. So this is where we are at right now. The alternative media will most probably, some already have, some alternative media like Breaking Points have already taken on this narrative of this person being basically a Ukrainian agent. This narrative is extremely easily debunkable. It is actually true with most of these narratives. All you have to do is do a minimum amount of research to find pieces of factual information that will disprove the narrative. But the sad reality to this situation is that many people who subscribe to those alternative media outlets, to those alternative media channels, depend on them primarily as their source of information, as their source of news, as their source of truth about the world. Which means that they will not look into the New York Times article. They will not see that the article speaks of stolen valor and lying. They will not see that the International Legion has absolutely denied any ties to this person. They will not see that this person just went on to Ukraine on his own, was rejected from taking part in any combat, and has decided to recruit people on his own. They will not see that this person has absolutely zero ties in any capacity with the Ukrainian government. No, they will listen to Mr. They will listen to Mr. Sagar from Breaking Point saying that obviously Ryan Roof was a lunatic, but he was also a lunatic who was deeply enmeshed in the Ukraine mercenary cause and credible enough to be quoted by multiple news outlets. Credible enough to be quoted by multiple news outlets. Ukraine and Congress must answer questions as to whether they met directed resources to him. See this alternative media little thing? We're just asking questions. This guy went to Ukraine. This guy was quoted in a newspaper. Doesn't that mean that he possibly had actual connections to the Ukrainian government? Doesn't that mean that probably, maybe the Ukrainian government could have directed resources at him? It's possible. We're just, we're just asking some questions here. We're just being the alternative media. We're giving you the news that the establishment will never give you. But you know what? Breaking Points will not mention to you that the credibility of being quoted by multiple news outlets is basically the New York Times saying that he's doing stolen valor and lying. That is not something that you will hear from the alternative media that will try to craft a narrative about a secret agent sent on a special mission by the Ukrainian government to assassinate the president or the presidential candidate. Oh, yeah. We're not really gonna focus on his weird politics, his weird inconsistent politics, and the people that he sort of supported. What I want to focus on is this conspiracy theory that Russia pushes with Medvedev, who already has issued a statement, a post uh, that basically Ryan is a Ukrainian agent, alongside with the so-called independent media that will, of course, eat it up and push this narrative to their pretty big audiences. And that is the worst part about it. This easily disprovable misinformation will still, no matter what, be believed by many people, because there are many people that only look to breaking points for a source of information, that only look for Tim Pool when it comes to information, etc., etc. There are people that only watch those alternative media channels, sites, etc., to sort of try to figure out what the truth is, and they get fed with total misinformation. And they will not listen to this sort of thing. Oh, they will not listen to Sagar saying Ukrainian Congress must answer questions as to whether they met directed resources to Ryan. No, they will not listen to this and say, that's weird. Let me look into some alternative sources of information to see if this is true. Let me look into this guy. Let me see if any of this connection to the government of Ukraine is even remotely true. He's been quoted in the media, newspapers. Let me look at the newspaper article to see what it actually said about him. Right? Well, I don't really claim to be like this big source of info. That's also like a big difference. I don't claim to be this big source of information that you should go to and ignore all other sources. When I say something, you should double, triple, quadruple check it in different sources. You should listen to what I say, go to a different source of information, read it, listen to it, and see if what I say even tracks with people that talk on similar issues. You should have a diverse source of information, you know? It should be like a thing that you do if you want to be informed, and if you don't want to be duped into believing some conspiratorial nonsense. I don't claim to be some great anti-establishment only source of truth that will tell you how it is like nobody else. No, I try my best to give you my understanding of the situation. I try to give you my opinion on a given topic, and I encourage you strongly to take what I say and look to other sources to see if what I'm saying isn't a bunch of nonsense and misinformation. What if he was an agent? You're right. There's also some more. Edward Snowden. I used to work for the government, but now I work for the public. Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden says I'm gonna show you this freedom fighting go get 'em journalist that also will tell you how it is. Will never mislead you. Let me see. This is so deep. This is the deepest commentary I've seen in a while. Let me see. We know little so far, but the alleged Trump shooter's personal, but via alleged Trump shooter's personal and public participation in military activity in Ukraine, which already, right off the bat, lying right off the bat, there was no participation in military activity in Ukraine. There was none. Personal and public participation in military activity. His whole military activity in Ukraine was that he went there, he wanted to participate in combat, got rejected, and then decided to try to recruit people to come and fight on his own accord. That is all. That is his whole personal and public, quote unquote, participation in military activity in Ukraine. But you can take that and spin it. You can always take that and add some, spice it up a bit. Yeah. It is hard to imagine this White House's agencies can claim zero contact, clean hands. So it is hard to imagine this White House's agencies can claim zero contact, clean hands, something of an Oswald vibe here. Congress should get answers. It's just, this is conspiratorial nonsense at its worst. In DC and Kyiv to provide soldiers for the war effort. And here is this guy's tweet. Please promote a global civilian army. Beg everyone to come to Ukraine and fight. I am willing to come to Ukraine and fight and die as an American to be an example for others. But I need your help with a media campaign to encourage others to come also. Please respond. So, does this strike you as a person that has some deep ties to White House's agencies? Does this guy strike you as some person that has some deep ties to the Ukrainian government? Does this guy even strike you as a person that has had personal and public participation in military activity in Ukraine? No, of course not. He just went there, boasted a lot, tried joining in, failed, and the rest is history. And then he went on to try to assassinate Donald Trump, which, this is the main thing that I'm talking about. This is the main thing that I'm talking about. This narrative of taking a bunch of existing facts, okay? This is how misinformation is crafted. This is how narratives are formed. This is how these things happen. You take a bunch of factual things that happened, right? You take a guy that went to Ukraine, wanted to fight in Ukraine, was not allowed to fight in Ukraine, tried to recruit people to fight in Ukraine, And uh, no, Edward Snowden just spread misinformation about the Ryan, the assassin, and then failed to kill Donald Trump. What can we do with these events? What can we do with these things that factually happened to spin a narrative? Well, since he went to Ukraine and tried to fight in Ukraine, well, that must mean that he has to have had some connection to the Ukrainian government. And he has been doing activities related to the military because he tried. And also, he became a recruiter for the International Foreign Legion because you see his activities. Do you see him recruiting? Surely that means that he has ties to the International Foreign Legion, right? And surely, since that person with all these connections, who was credible enough, mind you, to be interviewed by the press, surely since then he went on to try to assassinate the presidential candidate. It cannot be a coincidence that he also had a connection to the Ukrainian government and surely White House's agencies, right? Well, no, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the reality is pretty mundane. The guy went there, failed to join any sort of combat activity, um, was not a recruiter for the International Legion. The International Legion has, as we've read just before, has denied any sort of official cooperation with this dude, as well as the fact that the newspaper that has interviewed him, the headline says Stolen Valor, Ukrainian volunteers who lie. But you know, there's nothing like crafting a huge conspiracy with the explicit goal of painting the Ukrainian government in a certain light, and by extension, pointing the viewers, pointing the public in a certain directions with what they're supposed to conclude from this. Because what, of course, the alternative media like Breaking Points would like its audiences to conclude is, wait, Ukrainian government sent out an assassin to kill the presidential candidate of the US, and we're still supporting them? We're still sending them billions of dollars? We're still sending them weapons? We're still wanting them to win? No way. No, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna send a government that sends assassins to kill US politicians. That is exactly the narrative that people that used to work for the government but now work for the public would love. They would love for the public to come to that conclusion. And I'll just end this because I've been just repeating myself a lot. It feels like I've just been repeating myself a lot. It is easy to craft misinformation. It is easy to craft completely false narratives. It is easy to craft conspiracy theories without any evidence, without any logic. It is easy to connect unrelated facts and to sort of add spice to them, to form opinions among your audiences. But unfortunately, these alternative media outlets have big outreach. These alternative media outlets have big audiences, which is, of course, why the Russian government has seen this and have even reached out to some of these creators via shell companies and paid them a lot of money to spread that misinformation. This is why it is so extremely important when you hear this sort of a narrative being spun in front of your eyes to think, I should probably check what other sources of information say about this. I should probably check if this is even true. An article is being mentioned. I should probably look at the article and see what it actually says. Things like that. But a lot of people will not do it. A lot of people will not do it. And this is how misinformation gets spread. This is how attitudes are shaped. This is how you get people that say, hey, you know what? There was this guy who tried to kill Donald Trump. Interestingly enough, with connections, very active in the Ukrainian army, tried, with the connections to the government, tried to kill the presidential candidate that would like to stop the endless train of free money for Ukraine to launder. Because, of course, I don't know if there's anything else to say about the subject. I think I've sort of exhausted it. I hope. I hope that made sense.